Hi, I'm Mr. Raymond, and welcome to this Civics EOC review of the quote-unquote new benchmarks for the state exam. Today we're going to move quickly and focus only on the concepts you're most likely to see on your exam. So before we begin, I want to clarify something about my other Civics EOC review videos. Yes, they're getting a little old, but they still cover almost all of the content on Florida's EOC civics exam, except for these new benchmarks, which we're going to cover right now. So with that in mind, let's talk about today's goal. The video is a review, not a full lesson. I do have additional videos on each topic if you need to review. I just remind our teachers that there is a study guide and a variety of resources available by clicking the link in the notes below this video. Okay, so let's jump in with our first new benchmark, influences on America's constitutional republic. The Founding Fathers of the United States were influenced by, well, many things. But for the EOC, we want to know the influences of ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and the Judeo-Christian tradition. For the exam, I would focus on which ideas come from each influence. For instance, ancient Greece contributed ideas like democracy and civic participation. When you see Greece on the test, think direct democracy or citizens voting themselves. Also, make that connection with the birth of civic participation. Now, ancient Rome influenced republicanism, rule of law, and separation of powers. But for the EOC, I would definitely connect Rome to republicanism, or, as you know, a representative government of elected officials. The United States combined Greek and Roman ideas into a constitutional republic. Like we said, our biggest link is to republicanism, but remember from our federalism lesson that direct democracy does exist at the state level in the form of ballot initiatives and referendums. The Judeo-Christian tradition influenced ideas like justice and equality and individual worth. On the test, look for a connection to natural rights or the rule of law. These influences led to key founding principles such as natural rights, limited government, rule of law, due process, and religious liberty. You should be able to identify these principles when they appear in real-world examples on your exam. So looking closer at natural rights. Natural rights include life, liberty, and property, according to John Locke, or life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness if you're Thomas Jefferson. On the exam, for that reason, they're often connected to the Declaration of Independence or Bill of Rights. Okay, so limited government, a concept we trace all the way back to the Magna Carta in 1215, means that government power is restricted by the Constitution. And government and our governing bodies do not have all power. There are checks and balances. For the rule of law, your test is really going to focus not just on everyone must obey the law, but more the leaders, our governmental leaders, and that no one is above the law, not even the government. For due process, which we've covered a lot this year, all right, again, we're thinking about fair legal procedures, protection of individual rights, and the right to a fair trial. This is where it mostly comes in. Religious liberty protects the freedom to believe or not believe without government interference. On the exam, I would say focus on the First Amendment. Now, let's shift to elections and our next benchmark. Elections are important because they allow us as the people to choose our leaders, which in turn is going to influence laws and public policies. There are local, state, and national elections in the United States. For the exam, remember that states run all elections, including national ones, and this is part of federalism. For those local and state elections, think about your executive nationally being the president, the governor on the state level, and the mayor on the local level, and just how different their issues are. We've covered this before. So political parties. Political parties are organized groups that seek to influence public policy and gain political power. On the Civics EOC, you're no longer required to know where each party stands on some issues, and they seem to be focusing on the origins of the Democratic and Republican parties. For the Democratic Party, the state wants us to associate it back to the Jeffersonian Democratic Republicans, I should say. The Republican Party, the Party of Lincoln, started in 1850s. The party started to stop the spread of slavery. So why votes matter? Voting allows citizens to participate in government and protect their rights. On the test, voting is often connected to citizenship responsibilities or the impact of individual votes. Up next is the Electoral College. And the Electoral College was created as a compromise between a debate over who would choose the president, Congress or the people. Well, it also gave the states a role. For the test, I would focus on how the Electoral College works and its impact. Okay, so how does it work? Each state's electoral votes equal the number of senators and representatives. Test questions often focus on the total number of votes and the requirement to reach 270. The 12th Amendment changed the Electoral College process. Specifically, it required separate ballots for president and vice president, and making sure that there would be no more ties. So what is the purpose of the Electoral College? Again, it's to protect the smaller populated rural states to ensure that they have a voice in the election, as opposed to just the urban East and West Coast. Now let's move into economic system. An economic system determines how goods are produced and distributed. The three we are going to look at for our exam are capitalism, socialism, and communism. Okay, so capitalism. All right, capitalism is what we have in America. Capitalism is based on private ownership and free markets. Capitalism is often associated with economic freedom and competition. Socialism includes government control on major industries and limited private property. Test questions would most likely focus on the increased role of government in economic decisions. Communism includes no private property, one-party rule, and central planning on the economy. On the exam, communism should be associated with very limited individual freedom. And that's it. Before we cruise, let's review. All right, name 3 influences on the founding fathers. Ancient Greece, Rome, and Judeo-Christianity. These rights come from God or nature, not the government. Natural rights. This freedom for the First Amendment allows Americans to worship however they want. Freedom of religion. What is the system of choosing the president called? The Electoral College. Which amendment fixed the Constitution so there would be no more ties for president? The 12th Amendment. What 3 economic systems do you need to know for your EOC? Capitalism, socialism, and communism. And that's it. I want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe. And just a reminder, teachers, you can find matching resources on Teachers Pay Teachers by searching for Mr. Raymond's Social Studies. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos.